The grand Thornfield concert hall hummed with quiet excitement as 38-year-old Marcus Chen gave the brass fixtures on the main stage one final shine. Dressed in his olive-green janitor's uniform, surrounded by cleaning supplies, he blended easily into the background, just another worker preparing for the night ahead. Soon the plush red velvet seats would be filled with elegantly dressed patrons waiting for the gala performance to begin. For the past 2 years, Marcus had worked here as part of the maintenance crew, a job that offered the freedom to pick up his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, from school and spend evenings with her. The pay was modest but steady, enough to keep a roof over their heads and provide for Emma's needs. It wasn't the life Marcus had once dreamed of, but it was an honest one. Tonight marked the annual Thornfield Foundation Gala, a black-tie affair that gathered the city's richest philanthropists, business tycoons, and cultural icons. Under the golden glow of the stage lights, the hall looked flawless as Marcus moved carefully from one corner to the next, making sure everything sparkled for the guests who would arrive soon. When he reached the concert grand piano at the center of the stage, he paused. The Steinway's glossy black finish mirrored the light above, and for a brief moment, the familiar ache of longing stirred within him, an ache he'd learned to bury deep. "Almost finished there, Marcus?" a deep voice called. It was James Wellington, 52, the CEO of Wellington Industries and chairman of the Thornfield Foundation Board. Impeccably dressed in a black tuxedo, Wellington exuded the easy confidence of a man used to owning every room he entered. "Yes, sir, Mr. Wellington," Marcus replied, stepping back from the piano. "Everything should be ready for tonight's performance." "Excellent," Wellington said, glancing at his gold watch, every gesture measured and deliberate. "The maestro should be arriving shortly for his sound check." As Wellington spoke, several other board members and wealthy donors began drifting into the hall for the pre-event reception. Marcus recognized many of them, powerful executives, acclaimed artists, and polished socialites whose names often appeared in the papers. "You know, Marcus," Wellington said, a trace of amusement in his tone as he motioned toward the grand piano, "I've always wondered if any of our staff are hiding secret musical talents. Do you play at all?" Marcus felt a faint heat rise to his cheeks. "A little, sir. Nothing professional." Wellington's eyebrows lifted with interest. "Really? What kind of things can you play?" But before Marcus could respond, he turned toward the growing audience of elegantly dressed guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wellington announced, his voice echoing through the flawless acoustics of the hall, "it appears one of our custodial staff, Marcus here, claims to have some piano skills. How about a little impromptu performance before the main event?" A ripple of amused chatter spread through the crowd. Marcus's stomach tightened as he realized Wellington saw this as a novelty act, something to entertain the rich patrons before the real music began. "Mr. Wellington," Marcus said quietly, "I don't think that would be appropriate. I'm here to work, not perform." "Nonsense," Wellington replied, clearly delighted with his own idea. "It's a gala. Everyone should contribute to the fun. And really, how often do we get to hear what our maintenance staff can do with a $2 million piano?" Laughter rippled through the audience. Phones were lifted, cameras ready to capture what they expected would be a light-hearted joke, a janitor fumbling through classical music for the amusement of the elite. Marcus looked out at their expectant faces, the smirks, the whispers, the indulgent grins, and something inside him hardened. They didn't see him, not truly. To them he was a curiosity, a story to tell over champagne later. He drew a slow breath and met Wellington's amused gaze. "What would you like me to play?" he asked evenly. Wellington smiled broadly and swept his arm toward the piano. "Surprise us. Play whatever you think will impress this distinguished crowd," Wellington said, his voice carrying through the hall. Marcus walked toward the piano, still holding the cleaning cloth in one hand. He set it gently on the floor, adjusted the bench with practiced ease, and placed his hands above the keys, movements that felt as natural as breathing. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to remember who he had once been, before life forced him to trade his dreams for the steady rhythm of responsibility. Then, softly at first, Marcus began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major Opera 9, Charmissa 2. The opening notes shimmered through the air, gentle, haunting, and impossibly pure. The room, once filled with light laughter and idle chatter, grew utterly still. Every sound, every breath seemed to fade away, replaced by the delicate cascade of music that poured from Marcus's fingertips. His hands moved with effortless precision, weaving the melody with emotional depth that spoke of loss, love, and quiet strength. Gone was the image of a janitor. In his place sat a musician, a master of his art, revealing a soul shaped by both talent and pain. As the music swelled, the crowd's amusement vanished. Faces that had once shown condescension now reflected awe. They watched in silence, realizing that this was no novelty act but the performance of a professional who had once lived for this very stage. Marcus lost himself completely in the flow of notes, feeling the long-suppressed joy of creation rise within him. This was who he truly was. A concert pianist who had walked away from the spotlight to raise his daughter after his wife's tragic death 4 years ago. When the final note faded, the hall was consumed by silence. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire room feared to break the fragile beauty lingering in the air. Then Wellington began to clap, slowly at first, then louder, until the audience joined in with thunderous applause that filled the hall. The ovation rose to its feet, their admiration genuine and unguarded. Marcus stood, his face flushed, emotion swelling in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a janitor, but as the man he had once been. "Marcus," Wellington said, stepping closer, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "That was extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that?" Marcus met his gaze. "I graduated from the New England Conservatory 12 years ago," he said quietly. "I was building a career as a pianist when my wife passed away. I became a single father, and I needed steady work, something that would let me be there for my daughter. So, I took this job." A murmur of sympathy swept through the audience. In that moment, the man they had overlooked became someone they would never forget. These were people who understood sacrifice, at least in their own way. Their choices often revolved around business deals and financial risks, not the kind of sacrifice that came from giving up a lifelong dream for the sake of family. "Marcus," Wellington said thoughtfully, "I have to ask, why have you never mentioned your musical background? We host so many events here that could have benefited from someone with your talent." Marcus glanced around the hall, at the elegantly dressed donors and board members, before turning back to Wellington. "Mr. Wellington, when you're raising a child on a janitor's salary, you learn to focus on keeping your job." "I never wanted anyone to think I wasn't serious about my work here." Wellington nodded slowly, understanding the weight of those words. After a pause, he said, "Would you be willing to play one more piece?" "Anything you'd like." Marcus hesitated, then took his seat at the piano once more. This time he began to play Bach's Air on the G string, a piece his daughter Emma had loved as a lullaby when she was little. The melody floated through the hall, tender and aching, touching something deep in everyone who listened. As Marcus played, he thought of Emma at home with their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, probably finishing her homework and waiting to tell him about her day. Wellington felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. He thought of his own grown children, successful, independent, and yet somehow distant. All around the hall, people were moved to quiet tears, reminded of their own families and the sacrifices love sometimes demands. When the final note faded, Wellington stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the audience, "tonight we came together to celebrate music and the arts. But what we've witnessed here is far greater, a reminder that extraordinary talent can live quietly among us unseen. Marcus has been working here for 2 years, and we never knew the brilliance we had in our midst." He turned to Marcus. "Marcus, I'd like to make you an offer. The Thornfield Foundation will establish a full scholarship fund, one that allows you to return to performing while ensuring financial stability for you and your daughter. We want artists like you to thrive, not choose between their gifts and their families." Marcus blinked back tears as the meaning of those words sank in. The chance to return to music without giving up the life he'd built for Emma. "Mr. Wellington," he said quietly, "that's incredibly generous. But my daughter comes first. Any arrangement has to let me be there for her." "Marcus," Wellington replied gently, "a father who sacrifices his dreams for his child's happiness is exactly the kind of person we want to support. We'll build your schedule around her needs. Your daughter will always come first." 6 months later, Marcus Chen was performing regularly with the City Symphony and giving solo recitals at Thornfield Hall. In the front row, Emma sat proudly at nearly every show, her face glowing with joy as she watched her father share his gift with the world. The janitor's uniform was gone, replaced by a concert tuxedo, but Marcus never forgot that night, or the lesson it carried. True worth, he realized, isn't measured by titles or wealth, but by love, courage, and authenticity. In his office, Wellington kept a framed photo from that first evening, Marcus at the piano in his olive green uniform, a reminder that greatness often hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to truly see it. And 7-year-old Emma told anyone who would listen that her daddy was the best piano player in the world. Not because he performed in grand halls, but because he had once given up everything for her, and then found a way to follow his dreams without ever letting her go.